शुक्लांबरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। ॐ सिन्दूरारुणविग्रहां त्रिनयनां माणिक्यमौलिस्फुरत्तारानायकशेखरां स्मितमुखीमापीनवक्षोरुहां पाणिभ्यां मलिपूर्णरत्नचषकं रक्तोत्पलं बिभ्रतीं सौम्यां रत्नघटस्थरक्तचरणां ध्यायेत् पराम् अम्बिकाम्। ॐ ध्यायेन्नित्यं महेशं रजतगिरिनिभं चारुचन्द्रावतंसं रत्नाकल्पोज्ज्वलाङ्गं परशुमृगवरभीतिहस्तं प्रसन्नं पद्मासीनं समन्तात् स्तुतममरगणैः व्याघ्रकृत्तिं वसानं विश्वाद्यं विश्वबीजं निखिलभयहरं पञ्चवक्त्रं त्रिनेत्रम्। ॐ नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुर्गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्ससुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्।
धृतराष्ट्र उवाच धर्मक्षेत्रे कुरुक्षेत्रे समवेतायुयुत्सवः मामका पाण्डवाश्चैव किम कुर्वत सञ्जय। श्रीभगवानुवाच क्लैप्यमास्मकमपार्थ नैतत्त्वयुपपद्यते क्षुद्रं हृदय दौर्बल्यं त्यक्त्वोत्तिष्ठ परन्तप। यं सन्न्यासमिति प्राहुः योगं तं विद्धि पाण्डव न यस्यस्तसङ्कल्पो योगी भवति कश्चन। आरुरुक्षोर्मुनिर्योगं कर्म कारणमुच्यते योगारूढस्य तस्यैव शमः कारणमुच्यते। यदा हिनेन्द्रियार्थेषु न कर्मस्वनुषज्जते सर्वसङ्कल्पसन्न्यासी योगारूढस्तदोच्यते। उद्धरेदात्मनात्मानं नात्मानम् अवसादयेत् आत्मैव यात्मनो बन्धुः आत्मैव रिपुरात्मनः। बन्धुरात्मात्मनस्तस्य येनात्मैवात्मना जितः अनात्मनस्तु शत्रुत्वे वर्तेतात्मैव शत्रुवत्। यथा दीपो निवातस्थो नेङ्गते सोपमा स्मृता योगिनो यत्चित्तस्य युञ्जतो योगमात्मनः। यं लब्ध्वा चापरं लाभं मन्यते नाधिकं ततः। यस्मिन् स्थितो न दुःखेन गुरुणापि विचाल्यते। शनैः शनैः उपरमेत् बुद्धया धृतिगृहीतया आत्मसंस्थं मनः कृत्वा न किञ्चिदपि चिन्तयेत्। सर्वभूतस्थमात्मानं सर्वभूतानि चात्मनि ईक्षते योगयुक्तात्मा सर्वत्र समदर्शनः। यो मां पश्यति सर्वत्र सर्वं च मयि पश्यति तस्याहं न प्रणश्यामि स च मे न प्रणश्यति। अर्जुन उवाच चञ्चलं हि मनः कृष्ण प्रमाथि बलवदृढम् तस्याहं निग्रहं मन्ये वायोरिव दुष्करम्। श्रीभगवानुवाच असंशयं महाबाहो मनो दुर्निग्रहं चलम् अभ्यासेन तु कौन्तेय वैराग्येण च गृह्यते। असंयतात्मना योगो दुष्प्राप इति मे मतिः। वश्यात्मना तु यतता शक्यो वाप्तुमुपायतः। पार्थ नैवेह नामुत्र विनाशस्तस्य विद्यते न हि कल्याणकृत् कश्चित् दुर्गतिं तात गच्छति। मनुष्याणां सहस्रेषु कश्चिद् यतति सिद्धये यततामपि सिद्धानां कश्चिन्मां वेत्ति तत्त्वतः। मत्तः परतरं नान्यत् किञ्चिदस्ति धनञ्जय मयि सर्वम् इदं प्रोतं सूत्रे मणिगणा इव। रसोऽहमप्सु कौन्तेय प्रभास्मि शशिसूर्ययोः। प्रणवः सर्ववेदेषु शब्दः खे पौरुषं नृषु। बीजं मां सर्वभूतानां विद्धि पार्थ सनातनम्। बुद्धिर्बुद्धिमतामस्मि तेजस्तेजस्विनाम् अहम्। बलं बलवतां चाहं कामरागविवर्जितं। धर्माविरुद्धो भूतेषु कामोऽस्मि भरतर्षभ। दैवी ह्येषा गुणमयी मम माया दुरत्यया मामेव ये प्रपद्यन्ते मायामेतां तरन्ति ते। चतुर्विधा भजन्ते मां जनाः सुकृतिनो अर्जुन। आर्तो जिज्ञासुरर्थार्थी ज्ञानी च भरतर्षभ। तेषां ज्ञानी नित्ययुक्त एकभक्तिर्विशिष्यते। प्रियो हि ज्ञानिनो अत्यर्थम् अहं स च मम प्रियः। वेदाहं समतीतानि वर्तमानानि चार्जुन भविष्याणि च भूतानि माम तु वेद न कश्चन। इच्छाद्वेषसमुत्थेन द्वन्द्वमोहेन भारत सर्वभूतानि सम्मोहं सर्गे यान्ति परन्तप। येषां त्वन्तगतं पापं जनानां पुण्यकर्मणां ते द्वन्द्वमोहनिर्मुक्ता भजन्ते मां दृढव्रताः।
Thank you. Yes. So where are we now? 18, 19?
Yes, Dr. Shankar, we have to start from 20th.
Oh, I see. Yeah, right. Yes. So, Rajavidya, Rajaguhya Yoga, right? Royal knowledge or science of the royal mystery. So far, I think last time we picked up, Bhagavan describes himself, and then he points out why the nature of the true self, seeming so fabulous, right? Insofar as we live in the physical world and see all the experiences that we have day to day, right? In that context, Bhagavan's description, right, um, of his omnipresence, of his omnipotence, right? These are the descriptions, right? He says, and presenting it in different opposing, seemingly opposed, contrary statements juxtaposed next to each other to drive home the non-dual nature of the self, right? So as to move the mind towards that thinking, right? But intrinsically, he is just describing his omnipresence. He says, Yatha akasha sthito nityam va, just as the vast expanse of air moves, eternally subsists in space by moving, even so, know that all beings exist in me, right? This is establishing his omnipresence, right? Now, that is very difficult to conceive from the viewpoint of the sense life and the mind, correct? All that you can aver, knowing our physical world in the waking state through the five senses and the mind, is that I exist and I have limited presence. Yes or no? This we can say, right? To be honest, we cannot even say that. At least we can acknowledge that in through the mind and senses, this self is not omnipresent. Correct? Okay. Can we prove that there is an omnipresent self? Through the mind and senses, in fact, you cannot. At least I cannot. Difficult situation, right? So, and this was kind of the discussion we were having on the satsang chat. So at a very honest reader of this can say, actually, I don't know this. I don't know this true self. And I don't know what this person who says they are God is talking about. Right? Ajnanam. I don't know. To be honest, right? You have to be either honest or there's no hope. Right? And this circles back to the verse where Bhagavan said, right, Nadate kaschitit papam, etc., etc. The Nachaiva sukritam vibhu. And then what does he say after that? Ajnanena avritam jnanam tena mukhyanti jantavaha. Ajnanena, by ignorance, instrumental case, avritam is covered knowledge. Jnanam, tena, as a result, instrumental case, mukhyanti are deluded, jantavaha, all creatures. In this case, probably meaning conscious human beings. Correct? Okay. So, this is what I was saying somewhat jokingly, that the logical position without direct experience is that of an agnostic. I don't know. Right? Okay, very good. So we sit in this position, I don't know. Right? Now there are two choices. One can then deny that there is any such omnipresent consciousness. One can deny it, right? Such a person will then move to the side of atheist. I don't believe, right? But that is not logical. I was just having this wonderful conversation with my daughter. So she said, well, we always why put the onus on the believers to prove that there is God? Why don't we put the onus on the atheists to prove that there is no God? Prove to me that there is no God, right? Okay, so now we run into the situation. So are there how many choices are there? There is God, there is no God. Is there a third choice? So as long as there is no third choice, it depends on how you think about this. If you think there is no third choice, then if the atheist cannot prove that there is no God, then there must be a God. It is called via negativa, right? The process of negation. In fact, in mathematics, we use it, right? In proofs, right? But anyway, we are getting into an interesting realm. But I'm basically making the point that there is another choice, which is the wise choice. And that wise choice is, I say I'm agnostic, maybe. I start from that viewpoint. But then I acknowledge that if there is ignorance, I don't know. How about the possibility that I start to try to know? Okay, so this now is the path of the faithful. That is all there is to it, right? The path of the faithful is no different from the agnostic, other than they are not shutting out the possibility of knowing, right? You have three choices. Say, I don't know, and sit there. That is static, right? Say, I don't know, and deny it. That is idiocy, right? The only sensible, wise choice is to say, I don't know, but let me have faith and practice, right? So it is a good choice, right? And that's why having faith is beneficial, right? So even if all that Bhagavan has said up to 11 is not directly experienceable in this instant as omnipresence, one can have faith that, okay, maybe there is a possibility. Let me keep an open mind and let me try to investigate. The rest of this book is very beautiful. It talks about so many good things. Maybe I can keep an open mind and try to follow. Because after all, there are so many things in our practical life where we didn't know and somebody taught us, right? Let us take our own, every person's experience from the time we were a baby. We didn't know how to eat. Somebody taught us how to eat. We now eat quite successfully, right? We, in fact, did not even know how to defecate at the right time in the right place. Think about that. Somebody had to teach us that, right? So if we had stayed in the denial stage, I don't know, I won't learn, how would we be now? We would be wandering, lying around in our own excrement. Isn't that true? Now, spiritually, then to deny, isn't that lying in your spiritual excrement? That's what it is. How can you do that? That makes no sense, right? No, denial is a ridiculous thing without knowing, right? So we must apply by analogy. Didn't we say Anumana is one of the techniques? So from the time we were born, we didn't know many things. We didn't know how to eat. We didn't know how to defecate. We didn't know how to speak. We didn't know how to write. We didn't know how to communicate. And yet, by acknowledging we did not know and learning that there are wiser people around us, we progressively learned all these things. And now we have become very beautiful, wonderful human beings who are able to successfully do many things, inspire, and also teach others, right? So this progress has been made. Is it a miracle or not? So now, then logically, if you're confronted with one more thing which you don't know, what is the logical step? It's not to say, no, it cannot be so, right? The only logical position then is to acknowledge, yes, just like other things, I didn't know this thing, maybe I don't know right now. It's not forever, right? So let me apply, let me practice. The first step to knowledge is confronting one's ignorance, right? If we do not acknowledge that it's ignorance, then knowledge is not possible, right? So the worst situation of atheism is to not only not confront one's ignorance, but to deny its existence itself. Then there's no hope. If you do not, in all our learning, unless I begin by saying, I don't know this, I cannot learn it. It's not going to come just like that, right? So this is the import. And that is why 12 makes sense. Bhagavan says, he calls them Rakshasim and Asurim, right? Futile are their desires. And in another place he says, Mudha, Mudha, fools, Mam avajananti, don't know me. So he's making a very point that is very reasonable by analogy. I mean, as I told you, if a child or any other person refuse to understand in any other realm of knowledge, you would call them a fool, right? So it applies also to this knowledge, right? It is no different. So that's why Bhagavan is quite justifiably harsh in his assessment in 11 and 12. And then what does he go on to say? But then he says, Mahatmanaha tu mam partha daivim prakriti ashritaha bhajanti ananya manasa gyatva bhutadim avyayam. Knowing me as the imperishable source. Magnanimous persons, resorting to their divine nature, cultivating that divine nature. Because our Prakriti has two natures. Human life is at the cusp of the divine and the demonic. If our mind descends, very easily it can descend, right? This is the Dharma Kshetra, Kurukshetra. If we follow Duryodhana, down. If you follow Arjuna, then don't yield to unmanliness. Stand up, right? Uddared atmana atmanam. Raise yourself, right? So therefore, then Bhagavan says, how do they do this? Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dridhavrataha, incessantly glorifying me, striving with steadfast vows. Namasyantah cha mam bhaktya, always worshipping me with bhakti, nitya yukta, eternally united. They worship me with devotion, upasati. Jnana yajnena chapi anye yajanto mam upasate. Some with sacrifice of knowledge, ekatvena pratatvena, bahuda vishvato mukham. Aham kratur aham. And then Bhagavan, this was the reference again to Aditya Hridayam. We said it comes in many places. This kratu, I am the kratu, I am the yajna. And we talked about Shrauta, Smarta yajnas, Svadha, Pitra, Puja, Aham, and I am the Aushadhi, Mantro Aham, and Ajyam, Agnir, and Hutam, oblation. Again, somebody made a nice connection to the Brahmarpanam. I think it was Pranab, right? Same idea was echoed in Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavir. Indeed, in teaching, they say, you have to say it once. First, you have to tell them what you're going to tell them. Then you have to tell them what you're telling them. Then you have to tell them what you told them. Probably was learned from the Bhagavad Gita. This technique. So, Pita aham asya jagato mata dhata pitamaha vedhyam pavitram onkara riksama yajurevach. And then Bhagavan points out, I am the father of this world, its mother, sustainer, and pitamaha, holy object of knowledge, vedhyam. Another place is a geyam jnanam jnanagamyam, right? Is also applied to the Lord. Sacred syllable om, riksama yajurevacha. Okay. And then Gatir Bharta Prabhuhu Sakshi Nivasaha Sharanam Suhrit. And there was the beautiful thing, the friend who does without, irrespective of service in return. Prabhavaha Pralayaha Sthanam Nidhanam Bijam Avyayam. So all again characteristics of the Lord, divine characteristics. Um, and these don't apply to the limited self. However, when even in the human body, we perform a service without expectation of return, for us, that instant, that is divine, right? At that instant, the light of the divine is shining, and we are um, reflecting that. So this is the idea. Now Bhagavan says, uh, other um, divine. Uh, Actually, this also comes in Yoga Sutra, the Vibhuti path, where the siddhis and what is the consequence of the siddhi. Bhagavan is explaining those divine. I cause heat. Tapami aham varsham, nigrhnami, utsrajami cha, amritam chaiva, mrityuscha, sad asatcha aham arjuna. And again, I told you the Zen koan type, putting appositionally two opposites to trigger the mind into the thinking of the non-dual. Mm-hmm. Then he says, we were to move on to the next one, 20, right? Somebody is going to read.
I can read this.
Please.
Traividyamam somapah putapapa yajnairištva swargatim prardhayante te punyamasadya surendra loka masnanti divyan divik deva bhogan.
Very nice. Traividya mam somapaha. Yes. Knowing the triple Vedic, conversant with the Lord. The mam, somapa is one who drinks soma. In the Vedas, Indra is always depicted as drinking soma. Right? This soma is nectar that is dripping from the Lalata chakra. And by the yogic practice, when consciousness is raised above, so it doesn't burn in the fire of the Manipuraka chakra, this soma is experienced. It is a blissful drinking. And that is what is ascribed to Maghava, Indra, right? So this is both external and internal. So in the Soma Yajna and even other yajnas, as part of the ritual, the Soma plant is harvested, pressed, and there are very specific rules how it should be harvested, how it should be stored, how it should be pressed, the juice extracted and drunk, right? Now, in the Western study of these things, there is great fascination with what are the hallucinogenic properties of this Soma plant, right? And a lot of research has been done in that, how it is related to ephedra and how it grows in the Himalayas and what is the nature and how is it related to the Iranian rites, etc., where it's called Homa. Soma Homa. Remember the Saha, Sindhu, Hindu, right? There is a cognate there. But these are external, right? So one can spend a lifetime finding out about Soma and going and trying to find it in the Himalayas and enjoy the yajnas and all that stuff. But actually, the true nature of Soma drinking is internal. So when by the practice of Hatha Yoga and Raja Yoga, and in Hatha Yoga also it is mentioned that the Khechari Mudra, the principal mudra, Khechari, right? In one part it says, I will drink cow meat and liquor, go mamsam, right? It's a joke. Obviously the yogi does not drink cow meat, but what it means is that when the energy is raised in that fashion, the way it rises through the tongue, that is described as cow meat. The way the mudra is performed, the tongue is raised into the upper throat cavity, and that is like eating the cow meat. So these are all symbolic, subtle points, which one has to practice, and then the double meaning will be learned. And drink liquor. That liquor is Soma juice again. It is the consciousness descending from the Lalata Chakra, which, when it is not arrested and experienced, falls into the fire of the Manipuraka, and then comes out as our actions. It's the normal energy that we feel, right? So normally what is happening is this energy is coming out through our activities, and we are dissipating it through the eyes and through the sense organs. But when that energy is arrested, withdrawn from the senses, withdrawn into the mind, then it is sent in the reverse direction. Normally it's just flowing out. We are losing energy all the time. We are a conduit for energy. So we are talking, the mind is wandering. Every thought is a loss of energy, right? But if that can be held back, right? Again, remember, what is the verse that in the beginning we read, that Racy read?
Shuklam Vishnu.
Huh?
Shuklam Vishnu that you're referring to.
No, I was thinking of the one in the Gita itself, where you remember Arjuna asks Bhagavan, he says, Mano Durnigraha Chalam. And what does Bhagavan say in response? He says, Asamshayam Mahabaho Mano, he says, Vayurava Dushkaram, as hard as holding the wind. And Bhagavan says in response, Asamshaya, yes, undoubtedly, without Samshaya, Mahabaho, Mano Durnigraham Chalam. It is very difficult to control the movement of the mind, right? But then he says, Abhyasena to Kaunteya Vairagyena cha Grhyate. Through Abhyasa and Vairagya, which are the pillars of yoga, the 2 feet on which yoga science moves. And then he says, the one who is not yoked, Asamyatatma, it is dushprapa, hard to attain. But to the one who is yoked, it will upayataha, through proper means, can attain. Is that right? So that is the point. Whether we choose restraint or dissipation, that is the main difference. So when that is there, then somapaha. Both, right? So you can do external or internal. External right will also, you see, the external right must have been practiced in this or previous births, enjoyed. It's a beautiful, to sit in a Homa Yajna is fantastic, right? The fire experience of Agni, which has been purified, properly installed in a clean environment, if you've seen it, with the proper home samagri, initiated with camphor, right? And then purified by mantras, purified by ghee. It's a very divine experience, right? So that divine experience is meant to say, if this is so beautiful, how then beautiful must the fire inside be to experience, right? So that is it's meant to move the mind in that direction. So anyway.
Dr. Sankar, I have a question about the energy we just taught. So we say the energy need to rise up, right? And then in the beginning, so the verse I just came to our mind. Usually we do like Shuklam, right? So we want to energize the senses, right? And at the same time, we're saying that the energy need to rise. Isn't that contrary?
Good point. So the Aldous Huxley wrote something about cleansing the doors of perception. A very significant point. What are the doors of perception?
Sense organs.
Senses are the doors of perception, right? So once the senses are cleansed, right, then that energy, when it descends, it is tasted, right? But as long as they are obscuring the perception, it is not experienced as such, right? So there is both a descending force and an ascending force, okay? without the descending force, we cannot do anything in life. If the force does not descend into the human being, that human being is dead. Right? Okay. So now the force has descended. But having descended, it is now lying coiled at the base. Right? That spiritual energy is sleeping. Right? So first, it has to be awakened. Correct? When it wakes up, it returns to its source, right? And then this ascent and descent is seen, right? So both, when we pray, we are invoking that this descending energy may cleanse. It's already there. We're requesting it to cleanse our senses so that we may see the light for what it is, correct? And then also it must rise, right? So then, and then finally, in the ultimate experience, what Lord says is that this rising and falling itself is a Maya. Who can rise and who can fall when there is only one, right? That is, of course, the ultimate experience he is referring to. So definitely, there are some contrary seeming things. Anyway, Traividya Mam Somapaha, Puta Papa, that is cleansed of all their sins. And, we can think of many smaller sins, but the root sin is avidya. So that means they have been cleansed of avidya, right? Puta Papa. Yajnair Ishtva Swargatim Prarthayante. Yajnaihi, instrumental case of the yajnas, right? Suvargatim Ishtva, having desired the goal being Suvalok, Swarlok, Bhur Bhuva Suva, which is the realm of the gods, Swarga, right? So remember, I told you long ago that all the purpose of the Vedic yajnas is go Bhur Bhuva Suva. Correct? So these yajnas, Traividya Mam Somapa Putapapa Yajni Ishtva Swargatim Prarthayante, they pray for that. Conversant with the lore of the triple Vedic texts, Rig Yajas Sama, already referred to before, drinkers of the Soma juice, cleansed of sins, crave attainment of heaven after having sacrificed unto me. Te punyam asadhya, they reach the meritorious world, Surendra Loka of Indra, who is the lord of the senses, and enjoy there. Surendra Lokam, it's kind of broken peculiarly, the writing. Ma should go there. Ashnanti Divyan Divi Devabhoga. Ashnanti is ash, to eat. They enjoy. Divyan, what do they enjoy? Divine. Divi, Divyan Divi. Devabhogan, the enjoyments of the gods. Right? So what a beautiful day. Punyamasadya, having attained the Swargalok through their meritorious activities, the fruit of religious merit, they enjoy divine felicities. So what is the commentaries? Conversant with the lore of the triple Vedic texts are those who know the Rig Yajus Sama. They drink the Soma juice and are cleansed of sins by that very drink. Thus they worship me, who have assumed the forms of superhuman beings like Vasus, etc., with sacrifices like the Agnishtoma, and they crave attainment of heaven, that is passage to paradise. Heaven is their goal. Attaining the world of Indra, the fruit of religious merit, they enjoy divine felicities, supernatural pleasures appropriate to the gods. Now, next verse. We will see. This is not the end.
Dr. Sankar, yeah, I had so is he luring? So this is the heaven. Heaven state is not the ultimate Brahman state, right? That is the state of, the God. So is maybe Bhagavan is pulling him into, luring him into that state so that.
Well, I think pointing out more like, and yet, the truth of the matter is, we have to ask ourselves how easy it is even to attain that state, right? So, 21. Then,
I will read.
please.
ते तं भुक्त्वा स्वर्गलोकं विशालं क्षीणे पुण्ये मृत्यलोकं विशन्ति एवं त्रयी धर्ममनुप्रपन्ना गतागतं कामकामा लभन्ते.
Very nice. Thank you. Te tam bhunktva. They, having enjoyed Svargalokam, the vast Vishalam Svargalokam, vast world of heaven. Krine Punye, having exhausted their merit. Martya Lokam Vishanti, again descend to the mortal worlds. Evam, this way, Trayi Dharmam Anuprapanna, conforming to the law of the three Vedas, Gata Gatam, Kama Kama Labhante. They achieve movements to and from and desiring Kama Kama, desiring objects of pleasure. They achieve movements to and from heaven. Gata, Agata. So that's pretty sobering thought, right? And yet, not to be, this is the difficult thing. It's easy for us to read a Jnana Yoga text and think of Jnana Kand and think that, oh, Karma Kand, nothing. But even to do this in this Kali Yuga is not a simple task. This is nothing to sneer at, is what I will say. Right? Many a time, early on when we read, the mind, when it is still not yet, has not done any practice, when it reads these, oh yeah, of course, No. I have great respect for somebody who can even do this. Great respect, right? To be well-versed in the Trividya, right? Not easy, do you think? How many of us can say one Anuvaka from our Veda? Tell me. Do we know? We should not even start to sneer at this, right? This is an ancient science. First, master the very small piece assigned to our Veda, right? So whether you are Rigvedi or, forget even that. Let us first do Nitya Karma. Let us first be well-versed in Sandhya Vandanam, right? Once we are doing Nitya Karma, then in Karma Kanda, what we have to do? In Taittiriya Upanishad it says, Deva Pitra Karyabhyam na pramaditavyam. That means when the time comes to do for the Devas and when the time comes to do for the Pitras, we must not be laggard or careless, right? That itself is a very, to do Pitra Karya, Shan Navati. You have to do 96 Tarpanams, just Tarpanam. Not talking about Shraddham, okay? 96 Tarpanams are to be performed to the Pitras if you adhere to it properly, right? Yes or no? Right? So the discipline that had been enjoined even for attaining Svargalok is non-trivial, is what I'm trying to say, in the physical world, as explained in our Sanatana Dharma, right? Then we have to do all the various pujas, of course, full pujas for every, Deva puja that comes, correct? That is also not easy to do on time, every time, right? So that then we satisfy the minimum requirements in the Taittiriya Upanishad. It's a Deva Pitra Karyabhyam na pramaditavyam. And then on particular, apart from that, the 96 don't list the ones that come on eclipses. Grahan time, you have to do extra tarpans, right? Then on the particular Shraddha days, you have to invite the Brahmins, feed them, and do full homam, right? Then there are other observances, like Darsha Paurnamasa sacrifices. If one is a householder, Agnihotram, right? Aupasanam. so many things to do, right? Just following the basics, right? Agnishtoma is actually a pretty ambitious, it's not a small time yajna. You have to bring the whole community together, and it cannot be done by one person. So, the ones who actually did this in places like Andhra and all, Somayajulu, if you've heard the name, it's very famous and it's a very wonderful title. It means one who has done Somayajna, non-trivial. But I know, unfortunately, many Somayajulu who don't live up to that name, even in a very small way, unfortunate. That is Kali Yuga, right? But we can remember back that there were people who did this. That's why the descent is so important and powerful. Anyway, the point is that even having done all that, they enjoy the vast world of the heavens. Merits are spent, they enter the world of the mortals. So basically, from Bhur Bhuva Suva, through the yajnas, the Vedas take you, Karma Kand takes you this far. Karma Kand takes you there. There is an enjoyment in heaven. But then once those merits are exhausted, because these are still within the realm of the mind descends again, right? Takes new birth. So, having enjoyed the extensive world of heaven, they enter the world of mortals when their merits are spent. Vistirnam kshine punya martyalokam vishanti avishanti evam yathoktena prakarena trayi dharmam kevalam vaidikam karma anuprapannaha gatagatam gatam cha gatagatam gamana kama kamaha kaman kamayante iti kama kamaha. That they desire desires, hence they are kama kamaha. Gatagatam eva natu swatantrayam kvachit labante ityarthaha. They do not obtain freedom anywhere. This is the idea, right? Ye punaha nishkamaha samyak darshina. But what about men of right perception who cherish no desires? 22, please.
I can go.
Yes.
Ananyaschi chintayanto mam ye janaha paryupasate tesam nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham.
Okay, quiz. Where is this verse from? Where have you seen this verse in another place?
Vishnu Sahasranamam, Shankarji.
Very good. Thank you. Who said that?
I am not sure. I was not sure.
Praja?
Supraja. Yes, very good. Yes. Ananyas chintayanto mam ye jana paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam bhavam. Very nice. Of course. Beautiful. Connections are so nice. So what does it mean? To men who exclusively meditate on the ananyaha chintayantaha, unbroken meditation. Mam, me, ye janaha, those people, paryupasate, who elaborately worship me. Paryupasate. Tesham, actually, who apply themselves incessantly to meditation. Tesham, to them, to those nitya abhiyuktana, constantly, incessantly apply themselves to meditation. Yoga kshemam vahamyam. I bring prosperity and security. Ananyaha iti. Ananyaha aprithak bhutaha. Exclusive. Right? See, even in Yoga Sutra it says, right? Satu dirgha kale nairantarya satkara asevita drida bhumi. Satu. And that one, what is that? Abhyasam. Right? That practice, dirgha kale, for a long time, nairantarya, uninterruptedly, satkara, with a good attitude, asevita, when it is practiced, that becomes a firm foundation. It is that uninterrupted practice. Apratak bhuta, exclusive as non-different, are they who resort to me. Param devam narayanam atmatvena gataha santaha chintayantaha mam ye janaha samnyasinaha paryupasate tesham paramartha darshinam nitya abhiyuktanam satatabhi yoginam yogakshemam yogaha apraptasya prapanam. I grant to them who are perpetually attuned to me and who behold the metaphysical reality well-being, or both, the gift of what has been unattained and its security, because I deem the knower of the self to be myself. Tad rakshanam, tad ubhayam vahami, prapayami aham, jnani tu atmaiva me matam, sacha mama priyaha. These we have seen already in 7, 18 and 17. And actually we said that in the beginning. I think Raisi said that. Yasmat tasmat te mama atmabhutaha priyascha iti. Such worshippers are myself and are dear. Again, you see, Bhagavan is in the commentary, Bhagavan Sri Shankaracharya is establishing this non-dual perspective again and again. Nanu anyesham api bhaktanam yogakshemam vahati eva Bhagavan. But does the Lord bring prosperity and security to other devotees also? Nanu anyesham api. Satyam vahati evaha. Indeed, he does. But there is a distinction. Kintu ayam visheshaha. Anye ye bhaktaha te atmartham swayamapi yogakshevam ihante. These other devotees seek prosperity and security by means of their own efforts also. But those who do not see themselves as different from the Lord do not seek them for themselves. They cherish no selfish cravings, either in life or death. They have sought refuge in the Lord only. So the Lord himself brings them prosperity and security. Atha Bhagavan eva tesham yogakshemam vahati iti. Nanu anyaha api devataha tvameva chet. Tad bhaktasya tvameva bhajante satyam evam. Now, if other divinities are you yourself, their devotees are your devotees as well. Yes, this is true. And so, verse 23.
I can go.
Hmm?
Yapyanyadevata bhakta yazante shraddhayanvitaha tepi mameva kaunteya yazantya vidhipurvakam.
Very nice. Thank you. Ye api anya devata bhaktaha. Those who worship other devotees of other divinities. Yajante shraddhayanvitaha. Who worship them with faith. Te api. They also. Mameva. They are me only. Kaunteya. O son of Kunti. Yajanti. They worship me only. Avidhi purvakam. Not vidhi purvakam. They only worship not according to the Vedic injunctions. You see, this is very powerful. And thereby, in Hinduism, even other faiths are not excluded in that sense. Right? In Bhagavan's mind, Christian is also worshipping Vishnu only. Muslim is also worshipping, but avidhi purvakam, not in the Vedic way. Ye iti. Those who are the devotees of other divinities, both within our thing and who worship them with faith, that is, they also worship me only, but not according to Vedic injunctions. That is, they worship in ignorance. The idea is that they are my ignorant devotees. Kasmat te avidhi purvakam yajante iti uchyate yasmat. Why do they worship ignorantly? Answer, because. 24.
I can read.
Please.
Aham hi sarvayajnanam bhokta cha prabhurev cha na tu mama bhijananti tatvena tascha yavanti te.
Aham hi sarva yajnanam. I am indeed of all the yagyas, bhokta, the enjoyer, and also the Lord. Prabhurevacha. I am the Lord of all the sacrifices. Natu mam abhijananti. But they do not recognize me in truth. Tatvena. Ataha chavanti te. Therefore they lapse. Ahamiti. Ahamiti sarva yajnanam Shrautanam, Smartanam, cha Sarvesham Yajnanam. We talked already of the distinction between the Srauta Yajna and the Smarta Yajna. devatatmatvena bhokta. I, as the deity to whom they are offered, cha prabhu eva, I'm indeed their enjoyer and the master, Lord. Mat swami ko hi yajna, the sacrifice indeed has me as its master. Adi yagyo aham eva atra. I am the supervisor of sacrifices. C 8:4. I also am the supervisor of sacrifices in the body. Iti hi uktam. Tatha natu mam abhijananti, but in truth they do not recognize me. Tatvena yathavat. Ataha cha avidhipurvakam ishtva yaga phalat chavanti pratyavantete. They fall off. So having sacrificed in violation of injunctions, they lapse. They fall off from the fruit of sacrifices. Okay, so I think maybe a good place to stop for today, because there is some interesting stuff that follows. And I think it would be a nice place to stop and finish the chapter next time. But any questions so far?
Dr. Shankar, I have a question about the verse 23 here. The Bhagavan says those other, other divinities, right? Devotees were of other divinities, they worship them, but not according to Vedic injunction, right? So I'm kind of trying to correlate this, from the saying and doing of Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna. So all the different faith reach to the same goal, right? But here Bhagavan is saying they are not within the Vedic realm, but they also can reach me, right? So basically, they are not contradictory, right? The what Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna says and the Bhagavan says here.
Indeed, there is a slight difference in the sense that what Bhagavan is saying here is, he says they are worshipping me only, right? What Bhagavan Ramakrishna showed is, he said that through that path, when taken to its logical end, he attained the same end goal, right? But the next verse says that unless that logical end is reached, they do not enjoy or they do not recognize me in truth, right? So essentially what it's saying is, let's put it this way. Sanatana Dharma is the superset of all religions. Okay. So Bhagavan Ramakrishna, starting from the superset, could then show you that if I go through any of the subsets, I reach the same end goal. However, starting from the subset, you cannot reach the superset. Do you understand?
Yeah.
I told you that with Newtonian mechanics, you cannot prove relativity. But from relativity, you can subsume Newtonian mechanics. Right? But this really concerns those who are born in other faiths and who seek to practice Hinduism. So what do I tell them? The first recommendation is always practice the faith in which you were born. Okay.
Right.
Why is that? It's because when you reject that faith in favor of another faith, right? At the end of the day, you have to confront that identity also. When you go deep in meditation, you have to strip off all the identities. If you add on one more identity, then you have to strip that one off also, right? Unless you are willing to completely give it up, there are very rare few who make tremendous spiritual progress in one lifetime and who are willing to give up their original faith and convert to Sanatana Dharma completely. There are a few. They're not unheard of. But most people have a dilettantish interest. It's like, oh, I want to find out what is yoga, what is Ayurveda. But I don't want to let go of my original identity, you see. This is laughable. You're not going to do anything. You're going to only create damage to both your own faith and to what you're trying to imitate. All right. So my thing is, if you want to come, right, you must be willing to come naked. Naked meaning strip yourself of everything. Then come. Then I will talk to you. Right. But to stand on the edge of the swimming pool and put your foot in the water and say, I want to learn to swim. No. Right. See, the thing is, even if you are born in the Sanatana Dharma, you have to finally strip your caste from yourself in the final analysis. You cannot enter the realm of God thinking I'm a Brahmin. No, that identity also has to be stripped. Yes or no? That is why the true knowers are able to transcend everything, right? They don't see that difference, right? In the end, even that pride in having the benefit of that heritage has to be given up in the final analysis, right? So what to speak of then having a, other kind of thing. So in truth, those who worship with Shraddha, they worship Bhagavan only. He's right. When Bhagavan says that, he's absolutely right, right? He knows it, right? Because he knows that he is both the master, lord of the sacrifice and also the enjoyer of the sacrifice. Bhagavan Ramakrishna came to show us this because he wanted to show that this verse is true. By example of a human being, right? But a very special human being, right? Obviously. Huh? So I don't think they're contradictory, but there is a subtle difference, right? Right. You see, but the truth is, if you take the original seers in any of the religion, if you went and talked to Jesus Christ, right? Yeah. He would find no problem with anything in Sanatana Dharma. He would agree with everything in the Bhagavad Gita. There is no true seer of any religion who will disagree with anything in this. Right? You see, when you think of it, if you go and look around the true seers in all the religions that have started, they have some fraction of Sanatana Dharma in them. I told you already about the yogic siddhis, how a few were manifested by Christ. Right? But again, this is where the superset is. If you take Jyotish Shastra, you go and you look at Greek astrology, you will see they are all pale imitations of the complete Vedic Jyotish. It's there in different forms. In the Chinese understanding, the Qigong practices, not astrological, there it's more like a pranic practice, right? It's there. It's that wisdom is there in different ways. It manifests all over the world. In every community you go, there is some of this wisdom, but it's not complete. A fraction is there. Definitely it is there, right? I should not deny that. But we have to be grateful that it is in Purna form in our Sanatana Dharma. So that's our blessing. Any other question? Comments? There have to be some good questions. There were a lot of interesting and challenging things this raises, these set of verses. No?
Dr. Sankar, I just have one.
Sure.
Maybe not so interesting, but on the verse 21,
Mhm.
um, uh, thus conforming to the law of three Vedas,
Right.
it's referring to like everything mentioned in the Vedas, isn't it? Like nothing specific.
Trivida Mamso Baba. Right. So basically, what he is saying is that the Vedas, through their karma kand, when practiced properly, offer a guaranteed way to attain Svargalok. Right?
Right. I thought it says after they enter the world of the mortals, like after they are done enjoying the world of heavens and they conform the world of mortals and thus conforming to the law of three Vedas.
That's right. So what the three Vedas say is that as long as there is this uh, the exact thing I'm looking for there, Punyam Asadhya, right? As long as that storehouse of merit is there, they enjoy the divine pleasures, right? And when that is exhausted, which is the law, they descend, right?
Got it. Yes. Okay.
Any other comments or questions?
Like having a bank balance of punyas, right? If the punyas goes down and then have to
Right.
come back.
That's right. Indeed. Indeed.
So, Professor, like not a question, but and might be a little unrelated.
Hmm.
But this point you mentioned that even doing the basic karma kand, it itself is difficult,
Mm-hmm.
and especially so especially in our Sanatan in Bharat, what I have seen that recently. So there is a word I read. It's called pseudo Advaitites. So they call themselves Hindu and they call themselves like I am spiritual, spiritual but not religious. That type of that everything is same, and in that way they try to demean all the practices, rituals, and those things. So, and as you wrote the message in the satsang group also that they are bigger challenge than being an agnostic.
Yeah.
And that type of attitude is not good.
So it's a very difficult one. You're skirting around the edge of this question, right? So the question is basically this, right? So all this is true. So then what should one do in Kali Yuga? Right? It is practically impossible to perform all the yajnas and in the way described. Right? This is a but then Bhagavan says that this is the step one, you reach heaven, and now beyond that. So what is the way? Right? And this is the challenging question that we must answer. So what seems to be the most expedient way is to do what one can of the Vedic Dharma within the constraints, right? And that will differ for everybody, right? At least to have respect for it. The first step is, like you were saying, first simple step is at least have respect for it, right? Let us not dismiss Because what you're saying is very true, and it's very easy. I'm very sympathetic also to those who dismiss it, because I had the same thinking. You know, when I used to see all this ghee being poured and so many, it's like, what is this? This is makes no sense, right? So then, what are you going to do with it, right? If it makes no sense, then if you're filled with a burning desire to read the Upanishads, to practice the Yoga Sutra to its logical end, that's fine, right? Then when you do that, what will be the fruit of that? You will come back and say, this is correct, this is true, this works, there is sense in this. It will take you as far as Svargaloka, right? If that is your path, fine, then do it, then decry it, but then follow the decrying with something. Or shut up and do it. Make your choice, right? I don't, it's not wrong to say, okay, there is a truth to that, but then what are you going to do about it? Then you must practice. Then you must push yourself beyond that, right? Or listen then, right? So the best thing is, first you must, there is a wisdom in it. It's a very beautiful, so if we could have that Vedic yajna and other things, the entire society is benefited. There is no doubt about it, right? But now what has happened, that the entire situation has got very distorted, right? See, in the old days, the population itself was not so much, right? You're living in a prosperous country. The poor people were all taken care of by a good king. It says, in a Surajye, Matika Madhye. So there is a good king. King is taking care of all the poor people. He is supporting the Brahmins who are doing the yajnas. This makes sense. And your yajnas are not causing great pollution because the Vatavaran is clean, right? And that ghee is not, that is poured in there is not denying the food to a starving child, right? Now everything is so distorted. There is no good king. The poor are dying. They're being oppressed. The environment is so broken. So then the great sages and others said, in Kali Yuga, Bhakti Yoga is the best remedy. Take the name of the Lord, right? Not that, but this is a very interesting and nuanced thing. It is not saying that is stupid. It's not saying the rituals are useless. It's not saying that they are wrong, but it's saying that unfortunately we have fallen into such a situation that they are not efficacious anymore. And in a practical social context, it is difficult to justify them, right? So if I see a yajna, I'm very thrilled that somebody is doing it, right? But if somebody is walking away from it also, I see why, right? If somebody says, I am sick and tired of these yajnas, I just want to give in charity, I want to help, that's also good. That's also good. Do charity then. That's also not a bad thing. Social uplift, helping the poor, this is also good, right? And then ultimately, so the path, again, fourfold path, we said all are important. Do whatever karma you can, right? You don't have to do everything. If you can do even little bit of sandhya once in a while, daily practice, some form you have that at the time of the twilights. That's enough. That much karma yoga for Kali Yuga is enough, right? Bhakti yoga is easy. Taking the name of the Lord is easy. Chanting is easy. Japa is easy. We can do that as much as we can. Hatha yoga or Raja yoga, whatever, once or twice a day or as often as possible, one can practice that, right? Pranayam is not hard to practice, right? That much can be done, progressing slowly towards Raja yoga. And then the Jnana yoga, we are attending and reading what we can. So in this way, definitely it will work, right? So I think the long-winded way I was thinking that somebody is going to ask, well, if that is already so important, then why should we not be doing that? Well, it's not practical. That's the challenge, right? One can do to the extent possible, right? And that extent possible changes as we progress, right? We are able to do more sometimes. And Shravana, listening, right? That is the beginning. Right? Supporting in whatever little way we can, if there is a conference of Vedic priests coming together to do something, that we can support that, right? So that it does not die out. Right. That seems to me the most practical way forward, right? Any other questions, comments?
Dr. Shankar, another aspect of the 21, basically I'm confused. I want to ask, like, what is there any difference you think of when it comes to moksha versus swarga?
Yes, indeed. So mukti is the liberation, ultimate liberation, right? So this Bhur Bhuva Suva, above that there are other lokas, the lokas where the siddhas, right? Mahajana Tapa, right? In the Tapalok, they say that the food of those living in Tapalok is meditation, is dhyan, right? So what this is saying is that following the good conduct will help, right? It is important. The mind gets purified, chitta shuddhi. Every time we go and do a home or we go to the temple, we see the face of the Lord. These are all cleansing the mind, right? And the mind is now still composed of thoughts, but those thoughts are getting purer, right? Then when one sits in meditation and brings thought itself to rest, right? That is the portal to the mukti, right? Because even the fruit of good karma, enjoyable though it is, that's where this verse comes in the Mundaka Upanishad. Parikshe lokan karmachitan brahmano. So having examined all the worlds, which are nothing but constitute of karma, right? And in the ultimate thing, karma being thought itself in the Tapalok, right? So even good thoughts eventually have to be brought to rest, right? Is that clarifying what you're saying, what you're asking?
No, I mean, so if you do have a good karma, I mean, you can always expect basically a good place after you're gone, right? But ultimate source where everything which is we are talking and describing in Raj Yoga in this chapter is saying that even though you have those things, those good practices and good things,
right,
you have to continuously think about your main moksha, right? Like that's
right,
as you described here.
That's right. That is right.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So basically, Bhagavan is saying being good is important, it's necessary, but not sufficient.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Achha, so shall we say Shanti Mantra then? Nice discussion. Have a very nice evening and weekend, everybody. We'll meet again. Yeah. So, Om Tachamyora Vranimahe Gatum Yajnaya Gatum Yajnapataye Daivi Swastirastunaham Swastirmanushabhyah Urdhvam Jigatu Bheshajam Shanno Astu Dvipadehe Sham Chatushpade Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste, everyone. Very nice to see you.